Fighting is fascinating. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we play out hypothetical clashes of combat inside our minds, from wondering who would win in a contest out of two random people we see on the street, to debating which combat athlete of each era would win in a sanctioned contest, to arguing on the internet as to how one fictional character would struggle to triumph against another. I'm a fan of fights. I like to keep up to date with the UFC and big boxing events, not that this will be brought up later. I'm aiming to get my blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the MMA gym that I train at, and whenever there's a decent fight scene on, I can't take my eyes off it. There's something that is just captivating about a dedicated scene in a piece of media where two of the characters stand off against each other, where they trade blow for blow, punch for punch, and try to force their will onto their opponent. And that is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how two people clashing, deciding to duke it out to see who the superior fighter is, to justify their cause and enforce their will onto the situation they find themselves in, how two or more individuals end up in a physical altercation in order to do what they deem necessary, and at times put their bodies on the line. For this video, I want to define a fight scene as a scene where characters in a setting try to solve their conflict with each other through violence and combat. Most of the time this is either through hand-to-hand combat or melee weapons such as swords and knives, but for the purposes of this video I want to include shootouts with projectile weapons such as guns as a type of fight scene. And I believe there are two main factors that I believe that are instrumental in making an awesome fight scene. These are the stakes and the choreography. In my opinion, if one of these factors dips in quality, then the overall quality of the fight drops dramatically. And before diving deeper with either of these factors, I need to quickly define what both of these are. The stakes of a fight are the context the fight scene is set in. Why is the fight taking place? What are the consequences for winning or losing this fight for the characters and the world around them? What got them into this situation? What events led up to this moment? With these questions, the stakes are essentially the why of the fight scene. The stakes of the fight scene don't have to be all that big. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale, but they do have to mean something to the characters. It needs to matter to the characters on the screen. The choreography is the story of the fight itself. What blows and damage are the characters taking? What emotions are the characters going through in this moment? How is the energy of the fight placed? What actually happens during this fight scene? While the choreography doesn't have to be flashy or flamboyant, it does have to convey the message of the fight itself. The struggle of the characters on screen in a pleasing and attractive way. You should feel what the characters feel at that moment. So with these two factors in mind, I want to discuss as to what makes a fight scene awesome. As we discussed before, the stakes of a fight scene is the context in which the fight takes place. What world and events lead up to this fight happening between our combatants. Without any real stakes, the fights have no real meaning, and they're just there for entertainment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Heck, some of my favourite action scenes are just one dude beating up a group of people senselessly, and they have their place in the story. For example, Jack Reacher taking on multiple people to demonstrate how effective he is at hand-to-hand combat.
Okay, now we know who's who. Let's get this done.
However, when the stakes are high for both characters, when there is meaning to this fight to take place, that is when you feel the emotion in the fight. That is when a fight scene is at its best, and it's high stakes that lead up to 2015's Ip Man 3. The Ip Man series follows a dramatised account of the real-life Ip Man, a legendary grandmaster of the art of Wing Chun and a teacher to the legendary Bruce Lee, following his life from the 1930s all the way to the 1960s across 4 separate films. I adore these films. Donnie Yen is fantastic in the role of Ip Man. All of the films have fantastic fights, and there are genuinely no bad fight scenes in these movies. What I love about these fight scenes is that the stakes are intimate. They're not grand, bombastic or worldly, but they matter to the characters in the fights. The loss of a fight doesn't mean the end of the world, but the consequences of these fights do have a personal effect on the characters' lives, and the fight I want to draw your attention to is the fight between Ip Man and Mike Tyson. Okay, wait, I can explain. I can explain. Please, hear me out. Mike Tyson, in one of his few scenes in this film, is actually well directed, and in the context of the film, it makes sense for Mike Tyson's character, Frank, to be in the film. To put into context why the fight is taking place, for those who haven't watched the film, Ip Man is confronting Mike Tyson about the harassment that Ip Man, his family, and his son's school has faced from the local triads hired by Tyson's character. Frank, a real estate developer, wants to buy and develop some land in Hong Kong. The only problem is that on this land there is a primary school that has already been built on it, and the principal of that school refuses to sell. This is the school that Donnie Yen's son attends. The triads hired by Tyson's character harass the school horrendously, endlessly, kidnapping some of the students and threatening to kill them, sending a Thai boxer to attack Ip Man, all while Ip Man is trying to care for his wife who has terminal cancer. So Donnie Yen confronts Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson agrees to cease the harassment if Ip Man can last 3 whole minutes against the world heavyweight boxer, and with these stakes in this fight, it enhances the weight with every blow you see these combatants throw. The intensity of every punch and every kick, every glass shard broken, the sheer force shown in this fight is made even more impactful because of the stakes involved for both characters, especially for Donnie Yen's character. The fact that these stakes aren't on a grand scale doesn't actually matter, as almost every superhero film shows these days. But what is more important is that the fight matters to these characters. If Ip Man can't at least draw, he knows the school he is fighting to protect will be shut down, affecting the lives of not just his own family, but many other families in the process. I'm not going to spoil the result of the fight. You can either watch it online or watch the films in order to find out. But this fight does have the necessary emotional weight in order to make it awesome. And like all martial arts films, the choreography is well done. Despite the motivations of the characters, if the fight itself is not entertaining, if it's not pleasing to the eye, there might as well not be any fight at all. You could have the best motivations, stakes, and potential consequences for either characters, but none of these matter if nothing happens during the actual fight itself. Take the scene from Star Trek, Kirk versus Gunn. I mean, I generally have nothing to say. Just have a look at it, man. I have no words. For me, there's this sweet spot for choreography, where the fight plays out beautifully, such as 2011's The Raid. The Raid's choreography is a thing of beauty, with the sheer force of every strike, every blow being felt throughout the film, and looking like the most entertaining fight ever. While The Raid has world-class choreography, there are action movies that take it well too far, where they over-choreograph the fight, and in doing so replace the weight of the scene with sheer ludicrous. And a prime example of this is 1994's Undefeatable. Now, I'll be completely honest and say I've never watched this film, nor do I ever plan to. However, there is a fight scene from the end of the film, which on YouTube has Oh! Without spoiling the fight too much, I'll just list some highlights that take this scene to the realm of insanity. 2 oiled up men rip off their shirts while screaming at the top of their lungs. The main bad guy forgets how to use his arms multiple times. The female lead with a broken arm in a sling manages to do a backflip using both arms. Seriously, that last one had me in stitches when I saw it. There's too much testosterone flowing through this action scene. What's happened here is that the filmmakers have gone overboard on the fight during the scene. It's entertaining, very entertaining, but the problem is that the weight of the actual fight is dismantled by the sheer absurdity of what's happening on screen, with the excessive grunting, hilarious puns, and bizarre fighting. I can't help but laugh at some of the things that are happening on screen. Whatever the motivations are for the characters, it gets ruined by the absolute cheese of it all. The intensity is not there, and I don't feel the adrenaline that the characters are supposed to be going through. Had they toned down the cheesiness and tried to make it a bit more realistic, the fight would have felt more real, helping me experience what the characters were going through. And I can't help but wonder to myself, how would it look like if I actually felt what these people are going through? Would it feel more real? UFC 189 is one of the best UFC cards in the history of MMA. The main event had rising star Conor McGregor, the first superstar in the history of the sport, fighting for his first belt in the promotion, the interim featherweight championship. And his opponent was no joke in his own right, former two-time title challenger Chad Mendes. This fight was to be one of the biggest fights of 2015, and this is not the fight we're going to be talking about. Wait, what? Robbie Lawler was the reigning welterweight champion of the world. Released from the UFC early on in his career, he left to journey around other smaller promotions, most notably winning the middleweight championship in Elite XC, and was only signed back into the UFC when the UFC took over the promotion Strikeforce, the organisation with whom Lawler had a contract with. Then, miraculously, out of nowhere, he managed to climb up the welterweight rankings before finally capturing the UFC welterweight championship from Johnny Hendricks, a man he had already lost to. The challenger was Rory MacDonald, a Canadian prospect hailed by many as the successor to the legendary Georges St. Pierre, the greatest MMA fighter of all time, trained by the same coach, Faris Zahibi. He had already been bested by the current champion in their first fight, but Rory had improved exponentially since their last encounter. The stakes were set. The champion was looking to cement his legacy as the true champion in the eyes of the fans. The challenger looking to achieve an almost impossible goal he'd worked towards his entire life. And on the 11th of July 2015, we would find out who the best welterweight in the world truly was. The fight did not disappoint. The two world-class fighters went at each other, trading blow for blow, putting their hearts on the line and spilling literal blood in championship MMA fights. There are 5 rounds each, which last 5 minutes, and Robbie Lawler won the first round. However, it soon becomes apparent that Rory MacDonald is the better fighter, and it shows. He lands his shot with more ferocity, with more speed and more precision. But Robbie Lawler is a seasoned veteran. He isn't an easy opponent. He isn't just going to give up and lie down. And he busts open the challenger's nose, causing blood to gush down his face. And in turn, MacDonald fights back even more aggressively. And with Rory MacDonald up on the scorecards, 3 rounds to 1, the 4th round ends. And this moment happens.
Head kick. Wow, how good is this?
This moment is intense. These are 2 world-class fighters, 2 absolute warriors with indomitable wills, giving everything they have to be the king of the welterweights, staring into each other's souls, letting them know that their opponent will have to kill them before they quit. And as they both go back to their corners, Faris Zahibi, watching his fighter go to war with Robbie Lawler, says this.
Let's go. 5 minutes and you win. There's a 2-tip.
5 minutes and it's yours. Rory MacDonald doesn't even have to win the round, he just has to survive. Meaning that everyone in the stadium is thinking the same thing. Can he survive? And the answer is no. While the challenger's will was unbreakable, his body gave up on him, and from the brink of defeat, the champion has retained his crown. There's something to be said about this actual fight. The emotions that both competitors must have felt, the champion's elation to have given his soul to defend his championship and the challenger, with the despair of lying in his own blood, coming so close to his own dream. I can't help but empathise with Rory in this moment, feel what he is feeling, with so much on the line, only for your body to break down when you are so close. That has to hurt. That has to be a certain kind of pain, and I think this is what makes the best fight scenes. The feeling I get from watching this fight, considered to be one of the greatest MMA bouts of all time, is something that I feel movies and television shows try to emulate to varying degrees of success. The highs and lows of the fight, what these mean to each of the competitors on our screens, with a piece of the characters' souls being left in that moment for all eternity. The anguish, the struggle, and the actions taken during the course of the fight, which then leave their own marks. That's something that you see in the best fight scenes. Two people going at it, putting everything at risk to try and achieve their goal that they've set out to do. Watching fight scenes like this gives me a feeling I can't fathom to describe. And if you take nothing away from today's video, I hope I gave you both an introduction into MMA and a really good film series. And if you do decide to watch any other movie with a great fight scene in, I hope you can see what I see. As for me, I see what makes a fight scene awesome. Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more of these weird little video essays, then I'd recommend subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss the next video from me. I'd also appreciate it if you could like the video, and if you want to see more of these videos, I'd recommend the video as to why I give my reasons as to why another YouTuber will explode. I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.